My name is Lila Voss. I'm 34 years old. I'm a biomedical engineer, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It happened on Memorial Day, late afternoon. The yard smelled like barbecue ribs and citronella. It was the smell of a happy family. It was a lie. The laughter at the picnic table was loud, but it was rented. My father, Carl, sat at the head, his cheeks pink from the third Iron City. His eyes were not a father's eyes. They were the eyes of a manager about to fire someone before the fireworks. He said the words that ended 34 years of my life as I knew it. Your job is to earn while your sister sings. That's the way it is, Lila. Always has been. He said it like he was giving me the weather. Don't like it? You know where the gate is. The patio went still. The only sound was the neighbor's lawnmower 3 yards over. My mother, Ingrid, froze. Her smile was still pinned to her face, but it had become a piece of decor. My sister Annika just smiled into her plastic cup. She hid it well, but I saw the corners of her mouth lift. She was 30 years old, and she had never held a job longer than 2 months. She was the song. I was the speaker. She had won. She always won. I looked at my paper plate. I was not hungry. I would never be hungry in that yard again. I pushed the bench back. The wood scraped on the concrete. In that silence, it was a gunshot. But before I tell you how the lights went out at Voss Music and Sound, how I ended up in a quiet loft in Lawrenceville with a window facing the Allegheny, and how I learned what oxygen tastes like and subscribe. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. I stood up. My voice did not rise. There was no slammed bottle. No tearful speech. Okay, I said. I'll go. I lifted my keys off the hook by the back door. My mother breathed my name. Lila. A small, theatrical noise. I did not turn. They didn't get it yet. They thought this was a fit. They thought I'd be back by sundown, ready to slice the strawberry shortcake. They were wrong. Those would be the last words I ever spoke under that roof. Growing up in Pittsburgh, you learn early that 2 kinds of people pay the rent. The ones who buy the lifestyle, and the ones who service it. People come down from the suburbs to walk Butler Street and pay $9 for a pour-over and $12 for a vintage Smith's LP. Our family was halfway between those 2 worlds. We owned the music shop. Sort of. Voss Music and Sound was a narrow, dust-smelling shop on Butler Street in Lawrenceville. My grandfather had opened it in 1968, back when the neighborhood was steelworkers and bar bands. He sold used vinyl, harmonicas, second-hand guitars, and amps that smelled like burnt resistors. By the time I was old enough to count change, my father had inherited it, and the place was already wheezing. It survived on its reputation, which is another way of saying it survived on habit. Old pit music professors came in to argue about pressings. Aging blues guys browsed for slides. Tourists asked, "Do you have a public bathroom?" It had the smell of a place that mattered to a small, aging group of people. It also had the financial bones of a building about to fall down. I learned about favoritism before I learned long division. Annika was the artist. I was the help. Annika came along 4 years after me, and she was born special. Annika has a musician's soul, my mother always said. She hears things the rest of us can't. What that really meant was that Annika was allowed to have feelings, and I was allowed to do the dishes. When I was 10, I won the Regional Math League with a project on heart rate variability. I had spent all winter graphing my own pulse with a borrowed stopwatch and a stack of grid paper. I taught myself how to plot a moving average. I built a trifold board with hand-drawn ECG waveforms and colored marker. I won first place in my division. The judge wrote, "Highest level of independent inquiry I have seen in a 5th grader." I ran into the music shop after the awards ceremony, holding the blue ribbon. My chest was full of helium. Dad, look. I won the regional. The judge said. He was at the counter, restringing an old Telecaster with a pair of pliers in his teeth. He didn't look up. "That's good, Lila," he said. His voice was flat. "Did you finish those donation crates from the Skenley estate?" The helium leaked out of my chest. Just like that. I went to the back room and started sorting LPs by genre into milk crates. 6 months later, Annika, who was 6, hummed a 5-note melody into my father's old portable cassette recorder while she colored at the kitchen table. It barely was a melody. It looped a little. My mother actually gasped. Carl. Carl, listen to this. She has a voice. She rewound it and played it for him. My father stopped restringing. My God, Ingrid. She's a real one. He took the cassette to a shop the next day. He had it pressed onto a small vanity 7-inch single. He framed the test pressing in the walnut display frame we sold for $300 and hung it behind the register with a brass plaque underneath. Original composition. Annika Voss, age 6. Musician. That week, Annika got a brand new Sennheiser microphone setup with an audio interface to support her sound. Dad said, I asked for a real engineering drafting set for my birthday. I got an old Texas Instruments TI-30 calculator from the inventory shelf, the one a customer had returned the month before. Lila, honey, my mother said, her voice dripping with apology. You don't really need the fancy one. You're so naturally smart. Annika needs the support. So I learned the word that would follow me around for the next 25 years. The practical one. That was my title. It meant I was the one who was not special. The one who had to make the spreadsheets, take out the trash, fix the cracked pipe, and replace the burnt-out fluorescent in the back. Annika's job was to feel. My job was to function. Annika's music was a vibe. She would drift around the shop in a long flannel, run her fingers down the necks of the Gibsons, and close her eyes. I'm hearing a song today, she'd say, and put a guitar back in the wrong stand. She would order a pour-over next door and pay with my father's card. My music was math. By the time I was 12, I had built the shop a real point-of-sale spreadsheet. I had taught myself QuickBooks. My father was a man who could hum every B-side from a Coltrane record, but could not read a balance sheet in 2 months. He waved the bills at me when they came in. Lila girl, you're so good with this stuff. Just take care of it. I took care of it. I learned that Voss Music and Sound was not a charming neighborhood institution. It was a slow leak. My father was not a struggling small business owner. He was a man who liked the idea of being one. He liked telling people at the bar he was an indie record store man in the age of Spotify. He liked being the underdog. He didn't like the math. I did the math. I saw the rent. I saw the unpaid invoices. I saw that he had borrowed $2,000 from the cash drawer to pay Annika's deposit on a vocal coach in Brooklyn. I didn't say anything. I shifted things. I called the wholesaler and asked for an extension. I was 13, and I was on the phone with grown men, lying about shipping delays so they wouldn't call collections. One afternoon, when I was 14, I went into Annika's room to grab a stapler. I found a Moleskine on her desk. It was a vision board, full of magazine pages she had ripped out. A converted barn studio in Vermont. A recording session in Joshua Tree. A vintage Mustang. Underneath, in her looping handwriting, things I'm calling in. I had a notebook too. A green mead composition book. Rows of numbers in pencil. Vendors. Past due amounts. Renegotiated terms. Underneath I had written, things I have to fix. She was the song. I was the speaker with the blown cone. And that was our family. By the time I hit high school, I had no friends. I had acquaintances. People who said, "Hi, Lila," in the hallway. But I couldn't go to the football games on Friday nights. I couldn't go to the parties out at North Park. I couldn't even join the math league team, even though my AP physics teacher told me I should. My after-school activity was the music shop. While other kids were at Ross Park Mall, I was running the Sunday shift. While they were at junior prom, I was on a stepladder, dusting a wall of vintage tube amps that nobody had touched since 1985. My fingertips smelled like old solder for years. I was up at 5:30 every Saturday. I'd take the 54, down Butler Street. The buses are nearly empty at that hour. I'd unlock the front grate. The metal screech was the first sound of my day every weekend for almost a decade. I'd turn on the brass desk lamp at the register. The shop was always cold. I was the one who unboxed the bulk shipments from the wholesaler. I was the one who took the bus to PNC to deposit the weekend cash. I was the one who handled the angry customers. This used Springsteen LP has a scratch in track 3, a man told me one Saturday, throwing it on the counter. I just nodded. I'm so sorry, sir. Let me find you a cleaner copy. I was 16. I was a shop manager, a janitor, a bookkeeper, and a customer service buffer. My father paid me $40 a week. Cash. From the register. That's pocket money, Lila girl, he'd joke. Don't blow it all on Butler Street. I didn't blow any of it. Every dollar went into a vintage Carlsberg biscuit tin. The label was scuffed. It still smelled faintly of cardboard and shortbread. I kept it inside an old combat boot at the back of my closet. On the lid, in black Sharpie, I had written one phrase. Engineering. It was my secret. The only thing I had that was mine. I would sit on my bed and count it every Sunday night. $80. $160. $290. I had a state university in mind. I had a life I could see, where I had my own apartment and a CAD program open and nobody asking me to fix their cassette deck. My father found it. I came home from school one Wednesday. My door was open. My closet was open. My mother had been tidying up. The boot was on the bed. The biscuit tin was on the kitchen table. The lid was off. It was empty. My father was at the table, hands folded. My mother was crying soft and pretty, the way she always did. Annika was on the couch on her phone. Where's my money? I asked. My voice came out level. It surprised me. Sit down, Lila, my father said. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed in me, like I had been the one caught lying. We need to have a talk about this. We don't keep secrets in this family. That was my money. I earned it. You earned it from the shop, he said, like that was a counter-argument. Which, for the record, is paying for the roof over your head. I was saving for college. He sighed. The big slow sigh he saved for whenever I had the audacity to make a problem out of his problem. Lila. Dreams don't pay rent. Work does. Then he looked at the couch. Your sister needed an upgrade. Her old microphone was picking up too much room noise. It was hurting her sound. Annika did not look up. Thanks, Dad, she mumbled. You took my money, I whispered. You took my money and bought her another mic. We invested it, my father said. His voice was hard. We invested it in your sister's gift. You should be glad to support her. She's going to be a real artist one day. That kind of light shines on the whole family. I looked at Annika. She was retouching a selfie. What about my college? I asked. My father looked at me like I'd asked the wrong question. Lila, your future is right here. The shop. The family. Who do you think is going to keep this place alive when I retire? Annika? Be realistic. There it was. The word. Realistic. My future was a stack of unpaid invoices in a back office. Annika's future was a real artist. The math had never worked, and it would never work, but the words just kept being said. After that, I stopped saving. I stopped dreaming. I just worked. I graduated from high school. I had a 4.0, AP everything, perfect SAT math. My counselor begged me to apply to Carnegie Mellon. I didn't. I couldn't afford the application fee, not really, and even if I could, the shop needed me. So I worked. I worked the music shop. I worked for my father. I worked for my mother. I worked for Annika. When I was 21, Annika decided to launch her brand. She needed a real online presence. A platform. A landing page. A merch shop. The project was just called Annika Voss. A singer-songwriter project. She would post black and white photos of herself, soft focus, holding a hollow-body guitar, with a lyric and handwritten script overlaid. She needed a website. Lila, you do all the boring computer stuff. Can you build me a little place online? So I did. I stayed up until 3 a.m. for 10 nights, building her a Squarespace site, a custom domain, a Bandcamp embed, a Patreon integration so she could sell EPs. I designed the visual identity. I wrote the backend. I packed her CDs when she finally pressed them. She sold 14 copies of her debut EP. 2 were to my mother under different aliases. I packed them in craft paper and sealed them with a rubber stamp she had ordered from Portland. The shipping ate her profit. Then she abandoned the whole project for a podcast about songwriting that lasted 3 episodes. She left me with the hosting fee and the Patreon transaction fees on the 4 patrons she still had. I paid for it with tip jar cash I had hidden inside an empty 35mm film canister. I was 23. I was already exhausted in a way most people don't get until they're 50. I taught myself engineering software online between midnight and 3. SolidWorks, then MATLAB, then Python for signal processing. I built a small portfolio of personal projects. I took the bus into Oakland for a junior R&D engineer interview at a medical device startup near the hospitals. I got the job. My first paycheck that didn't come from a cash register. The first time the direct deposit hit my account, I sat in my car in the parking lot and stared at the screen like a foreign language. I had to beg my father to let me take the job. "What about the shop?" he yelled. "I'll work nights. I'll work weekends. I'll do the books from home." And I did. 40 hours at the medtech company. Another 25 to 30 at the shop. Inventory. Vendor calls. Year-end taxes. The website. I was supporting 2 full-time businesses and getting paid by one. Most of my real paycheck went to them anyway. "The shop is just in a slow quarter, Lila," my mother would say. "We just need a little help." It was a slow quarter for 10 years. I was 34. I was tired. I was the carpenter who built the cage and lived inside it. The Carlsberg tin was long gone. So was Carnegie Mellon, Pitt, any of it. What I had instead was a senior R&D engineer title at a Pittsburgh medtech company. I had built the firmware on a cardiac monitor that was now in 14 U.S. hospitals. I led a team of 9. I was up for director of R&D. I was also still the family ATM. That last week before Memorial Day was a hard one. We were in the middle of an FDA submission at work. I was on a clinical trial response rotation. Up until 2 a.m. every night for 9 days. On Friday, the shop's landlord called my cell. Not the shop. Not my father. His name was Mr. Caprio. He had owned that block since the 70s. He had always been kind to me. "Lila, I'm sorry to bother you on a Friday. Your dad is 5 months behind. Rent and utilities. I can't carry it. He's not picking up. He told someone you took the deposit cash." I closed my eyes. "I'll handle it, Mr. Caprio. Please don't post a notice. Give me 48 hours. I looked at my savings. I had been 3 months from a down payment on a small loft in Lawrenceville. The first thing in 34 years that was going to be mine. I transferred the back rent and the utilities. It took me almost down to my emergency fund. I worked through Saturday on the FDA package. I worked through Sunday morning. I drove to the Memorial Day cookout in the clothes I had slept in. A coffee stain on my sleeve. The yard smelled like ribs and citronella. Annika was on the patio swing, scrolling. She wore a flowy white sundress that looked like it cost more than my rent. Her nails were pearl pink. "Oh, good, you're here, sweetie." My mother kissed my cheek. "Could you make the potato salad?" Dad's hand is acting up again. I made the potato salad. Of course I made the potato salad. At the table I tried. I had to. I had to make them see I was a person. "It's been a heavy week at work," I said, trying to sound casual. "We submitted the FDA package on the cardiac monitor. It's the biggest device I've ever shipped." The CEO sent the whole team a thank you note. My mother smiled. "Oh, that's nice, Lila." She turned, automatically, to my sister. "But did you hear Annika's news? Tell her, sweet girl." Annika's eyes shone. "Oh my God, you guys. I am officially partnering with Birch and Brook Coffee. They are sending me a whole quarterly bag set. And they're paying me $900 for 1 reel. 900. For 1 reel. My father raised his bottle. "That's our girl. A real creative entrepreneur. We are so proud of you. $900 for 1 Instagram reel." I had just submitted a regulatory package on a device with $200 million in projected sales for my company. I had just paid 5 months of their rent. I had been on call for 9 days. And the table was raising a glass to a bag of coffee. The math. It had never, ever worked. My patience cracked. It didn't snap. It just split like old wood. "Congratulations, Annika," I said. My voice was empty. I turned. "Dad, we need to talk about the shop." His smile fell off his face. "This is not the time, Lila." "When is the time?" The rent bounced again. I had to cover 5 months. Plus the utilities. My mother gasped, performance grade. Oh, Lila, you didn't have to. She had to, my father said quietly. It's the family business. It's your business, Dad. My voice was rising. I couldn't stop it. I have a real job. A job I work 70 hours a week. I can't be your bookkeeper, your bank, and your delivery driver anymore. Annika's eyes filled with instant tears. They always came on cue. Why are you always like this? Why do you always have to ruin everything? You're a workaholic. Just let us be happy. This is not about workaholism, Annika. My voice was sharp now. This is about fairness. I work. I bleed. I lose sleep. You get free coffee. Enough. My father's hand came down on the picnic table. The bottles jumped. His face had gone red. You want to talk about fairness? I'll tell you about fairness. And there it was. Your job is to earn while your sister sings. That's it. Simple as that. The silence that followed had weight. I could feel it pressing on my collarbones. Your job. Not you're our daughter. Not your family. Your job. He had finally said it out loud, the line he had been writing in the air over my head my entire life. I wasn't a person at this table. I was an income stream. I was the queen's worker bee. I looked at him, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. It was like a cable I had been holding for 34 years had been cut clean, and I was free-floating in the dark. He wasn't done. Don't like it? You know where the gate is. He thought I would cry. He thought I would back down. He thought I would ask him to take it back. He was wrong. Something in me broke clean in two. The good daughter half just turned to dust. I felt it leave my body. I stood up. My mother said, Lila, sit down. He didn't mean it. Yes, he did. My voice was quiet. The shaking was completely gone. I looked at my father. Okay, I'll go. I walked off the patio, through the side gate, around to the front of the house. I picked up my keys from the bench. I picked up my jacket. I walked to my car. I did not slam the door. I closed it like a hospital door, soft and slow. I started the engine. I drove away. I did not look in the rear view. I left them on the patio with the cold ribs and the citronella candles and the $900 coffee deal. I left behind the only family I had ever known. For the first time in my life, I took a breath that went all the way to the bottom of my lungs. I spent that first night in a chain hotel off the Parkway, the kind with industrial carpet and a sad continental breakfast. The bed felt thin. It was the deepest sleep I'd had in a decade. The quiet was strange. It was so loud. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz. I kept waiting for a knock at the door. There was a flicker of guilt. This is crazy. They are my family. I should drive back. They must be panicking. I woke up the next morning, Tuesday. I checked my phone. Nothing. Not one missed call. Not one text. Not even from my mother. They weren't panicking. They were waiting. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I was throwing a tantrum. They were sitting at the kitchen table with their arms crossed, expecting the door to open, expecting me to walk in and apologize. They were planning to act mildly inconvenienced when I came back. Something cold settled into me. I stopped feeling sad. I stopped feeling guilty. I started feeling clear. I had been a vending machine for 34 years. They were standing there pressing the buttons, certain a snack would drop. I was just no longer plugged in. I bought a black coffee from the gas station. It was terrible. I sat on the hotel bed and drank it and waited. The first call came on Thursday. The screen said Dad. My stomach jumped. Muscle memory. He's calling. He's apologizing. I let it go to voicemail. I waited. I played the message. It was not an apology. Lila, this little stunt has gone on long enough. You've made your point. You're being dramatic. I need you back to handle the quarterly inventory tax. The state is sending notices. Get back here. Beep. I stared at the phone. Not, are you safe? Not, I was wrong. It was, I need quarterly inventory tax handled. A dry laugh came up in my throat. I deleted it. The next message was from my mother that night. She was crying. Or doing the version of crying that worked best on me. Lila, sweetheart. Please. Please come home. My back went out. I can't even pick up the laundry basket. Your father is in a state. He hasn't slept. He keeps yelling at the cat. You always knew how to manage him. I need you. Please. Beep. This was her weapon. It always had been. My back went out. I need you. Your father is in a state. There was never a question about how I was. There was never a Lila, are you okay? There was only ever this house, this man, and the small empire of needs they had built on top of me. I deleted it. The next morning the texts from Annika started. Text 1, Lila, call me. It's important. Text 2, I know you're seeing these. Stop being a child. Text 3, Dad is going to lose it. Pick up. I let her call. It went to voicemail. Beep. Annika's voice was the fastest and the most panicked of all of them. Lila, where are you? Mom said you really left, but I just thought she was being intense. Listen. I have this incredible idea. A music video shoot. 3 days in Brooklyn. Real director, real DP, the whole thing. I already have a director who said yes. The down payment is $14,000. 14. Dad said you would just wire it. I'll pay you back in like 4 months. This thing is going to be huge. Call me. He's freaking out. Call me. Beep. I sat on the hotel bed. I looked out the window at a parking lot. I was not a sister. I was not a person. I was a Venmo account that had just been deleted. I laughed out loud. It was a dry, empty sound. The kind of laugh you make at funerals. The week became a storm. Dad's voicemails got angrier. I am not playing, Lila. You are blowing up this family. You're an ungrateful child. Mom's voicemails got more desperate. I haven't eaten. I'm going to call the police. Annika's texts got cruel. You are jealous of me. You always have been. This was my chance and you broke it on purpose. My phone buzzed every few minutes. A constant, low vibration of their need, their anger, their entitlement. 10 missed calls. 25. 40. By the end of the second week it was 55. I had moved into a furnished month-to-month apartment near the Strip District. It was small. The carpet was beige and a little stained. There was nothing on the walls. It was the most peaceful room I had ever been in. I sat on the floor on the second Sunday with a cup of green tea. My hand was steady. I opened my contacts. Dad, block this caller. Mom, block this caller. Annika, block this caller. The buzzing stopped. The silence that came after wasn't empty. It was a full silence. It was the sound of the radiator clicking on. It was the sound of someone laughing on the sidewalk outside. It was the sound of my own breath in and out. For the first time in my life, the silence had a sound, and the sound was peace. They had thought my power lived in what I did for them. My circuits. My money. My evenings. My problem solving. They were wrong. My power lived in not doing it. My power was the off switch. I had finally pressed it. The first month of my silence was, paradoxically, the loudest month of my life. I was working from my new empty apartment. I was trying to focus on the FDA follow-up. The aftershocks of my exit kept finding me. I wasn't there, so I didn't see the shop crumble. I just heard it in pieces on the phone. The first piece was a call from a man named Marv. He was our biggest vinyl wholesaler. He'd been giving us net 60 terms for years on a handshake. He had called me Lila since I was 12. Lila, thank God I got you. Your dad's last check came back. He's not picking up the phone. He told me last week you ran off with the holiday inventory money. He said the police were involved. Lila, that's not real, is it? I closed my eyes. A hot flush of shame, then rage. Pure rage. He's lying, Marv. None of that is true. I figured. His voice was tired. You were the only reason I gave him terms this long, kid. You always made it right. So, are we going to make it right? This was the moment. This was the test. Was I going to step back into the role? Marv, I'm so sorry to do this. I'm not with the shop anymore. I can't help you collect. There was a long pause. What? Lila, you're the shop. You've been running that store since you were a kid. Not anymore. You'll have to deal directly with Carl Voss. But Carl is, he sighed. I know, I said. I'm sorry. I hung up. I sat for a long time. I felt sick. I felt like I had betrayed him. I hadn't. My father had betrayed him years ago. I had just stopped covering for it. The next call was from the music director at a local arts magnet middle school. We had a small but reliable contract for their student instrument program every fall. I had set it up myself at 17. Lila, we've been calling the shop for 2 weeks. The fall instrument order is past due. Your father said he was still sourcing, which makes no sense because we always order the same models. Do you know what's going on? I don't work there anymore. I'm so sorry. You'll need to speak to my father. Oh. Her voice cooled. I see. Well, we're going to cancel and place the order with Empire Music's institutional account. I'm sorry, Lila. I always thought of you when I called. The school instrument contract. About 20% of the shop's annual revenue. Gone in one phone call. I wanted to know about Annika. The collaborations. The single drops. My family was blocked. Her Instagram was public. I made a burner account, no name, no photo, just to look. The Birch and Brook coffee post was gone. Deleted. The music video shoot announcement post was up, then gone, then up with new dates, then gone for good. The comments on her older posts were brutal. Where's the EP I pre-ordered 6 weeks ago? You took my Patreon money and ghosted me. This is theft. Reporting this account. Do not buy from this person. So her sponsorships had collapsed. Her audience had turned. Of course it had. She had no follow-through. She never had. She had been propped up entirely by people like me, doing the work behind her face. Her latest post was a black and white selfie of her crying. Caption: My family is in the middle of a deep wound. A very selfish person has tried to dismantle our peace. Because of this, I am pausing all releases and shoots indefinitely. If you have ever loved my music, my GoFundMe is in my bio. Every dollar is a song to me. I clicked the link. Her goal was $14,000. She had raised $110. There was one $50 donation from Ingrid Voss, my mother. It was painful in a way that wasn't sympathy. It was just sad. Pathetically sad. The last call was from Mr. Caprio, the landlord. I knew the second I saw his name. Lila. I'm calling as a courtesy. I'm posting the eviction notice in the morning. I sat down on my apartment floor. I leaned my head against the wall. It's that bad. It's worse, he said quietly. He hasn't paid the bank either. Apparently for a year. They put a freeze on the account. He came into my office on Monday yelling about a private buyer who was going to save the shop. He told me you were brokering a deal with a tech company. He said you were finally pulling your weight. I'm not doing any of that, Mr. Caprio. I know, child. I know. He sighed. I just wanted you to hear it from me. You poured your whole life into that place. You were the only reason it lasted this long. It's a sad thing. It is a sad thing, I said. For years, my paycheck was their floor. I was the floor itself. They had walked across me so many times they had forgotten I was wood. They thought they were standing on stable ground. They thought they were walking on my father's name. They weren't. They were walking on my back. The day I stood up, the floor went out from under them. I was not a scapegoat. A scapegoat is a creature you blame. I had been the pack horse. I had been the one carrying the weight while they walked around with their heads up, telling people they had a daughter and a sister and a successful little music shop on Butler Street. I had been their unpaid investor, their line of credit, their emergency fund, their tax preparer, their tech support. I wasn't a person. I was infrastructure. And now the infrastructure had been decommissioned. They were falling. They were falling fast. I was not going to catch them. My hands were finally my own. They were not for holding up other people's bad decisions. They were for designing circuits, for cooking dinner, for petting a dog, for hanging a picture in my own apartment. My only job now was to lock my door, turn up the heat, and finish the verification report I owed my real boss. The collapse was complete, and I never lifted a finger. I had only stopped lifting. A month after the eviction was posted, there was a knock at my door. It was a sharp, decisive knock. It was not a police knock. It was not the soft, pleading scratch my mother would have used. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole. It was Aunt Greta, my mother's older sister. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. Aunt Greta was nothing like my mother. My mother was soft, round, doe-eyed. Aunt Greta was long, sharp, and built like a bird of prey. She was a forensic accountant for the state of Ohio. She lived in Cleveland. She was the only person in our extended family who had ever talked to me like I was a grown woman. I opened the door. She was holding 2 coffees from a real coffee shop. She was wearing a charcoal blazer. Her gray hair was twisted into a clean bun. "Lila, can I come in? Or we can walk." "Up to you." "Come in," I said. She walked into my small, clean apartment and looked around. She didn't say, "It's so empty." She didn't say, "It's so small." She just nodded. "This is good light. You did well." She handed me one of the coffees. Black. No sugar. I remembered. I almost cried right there in the entryway. She remembered. From 4 years ago. My own mother had not remembered the year I went off dairy. We sat at my small kitchen table. My hands were shaking. "Did they send you?" I asked. Aunt Greta laughed. It was a dry, intelligent sound, like a page being turned. "No one sends me anywhere, Lila. Your mother called me, of course. She called me every day for a week. Crying. Hysterical. What did she want?" "Money," Greta said. She took a sip. "What else?" "She said you had abandoned them. That you had run off. That you had created some kind of horrible situation." She didn't know I already knew. I looked down at my hands. "It is a horrible situation." "Yes, it is," she said. She set her cup down and reached into her leather briefcase. "But here is the thing you need to know, Lila." She pulled out a thick brown envelope. It had a window in the front. In the window, I could see the words Internal Revenue Service. "This," she said, sliding it across the table. "This is the real situation. This is what you have actually been paying for. And no one ever told you." My voice was a whisper. "What is that?" "Your mother panicked," Greta said. "She called me for money." I said no. She kept calling. She finally said the bank had pulled the line, the shop was closed, and now there are letters from the federal government. That got my attention. I told her to email me everything. She did that night. She tapped the envelope. "I have been suspicious of your father's books for 20 years. Now I have proof." "Proof of what?" "Annika," Greta said. "Annika Voss. The EPs. The Patreon. The merch line. The tour she never actually went on. Every failed creative project of hers for the last decade." I just nodded. I felt the air in the room get cold. "They didn't just lose money on those projects, honey. They claimed it. Your father and Annika, with help from a tax preparer who is also going to be in some trouble soon." She pulled out a 1040. "They claimed nearly $80,000 in fake business deductions over the last 6 years. They filed Annika's brand as a music subsidiary of the shop. Her car. Her phone. Her trips to Joshua Tree and Nashville and Mexico City. Her dinners with friends. All of it filed as research and content development." I couldn't breathe. But there was no business. None of it ever made any real money. "Exactly," Greta said. "It was a shell. It was a way to bury Annika's lifestyle inside the music shop's losses, so the shop could keep showing a manageable loss every year. It was a way to keep your father out of personal bankruptcy and Annika in pour-over coffee. The shop wasn't bleeding because of Spotify killing record stores. It was bleeding because they had been writing off her vacations as it. For years." I was shaking. "So the rent was overdue and the wholesaler was unpaid because the IRS finally noticed. They put a lien on the business account. The bank reacted. The landlord reacted. Your father didn't lose the shop because of one bounced rent check, Lila. He lost it because the federal government connected the dots. You were the last to know." I felt sick. "They told me it was my salary," I whispered. "They said my real job money was making me selfish. That I was the one bleeding them dry." Aunt Greta reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Her hand was warm and steady. "Listen to me, Lila Voss. Listen carefully. You did not do this. You did not break this family. You only stopped carrying it." I started to cry. It was a hot, silent, deep crying. The kind that comes up from somewhere old. "They built a house out of paper," she said. "They glued it together with your money. You finally walked out. The house collapsed because it was paper. That is not your fault. A real house wouldn't have." She let me cry for a minute. She didn't fill the silence. They are getting off light, she said. The IRS will make them repay the deductions, plus interest, plus civil penalties. Your father will be paying that off for the rest of his working life. Annika too. There will be no criminal charges because no one at the DOJ cares enough about a struggling record store in Pittsburgh. But there will be no more shop. No more brand. She slid the envelope toward me. This is your copy. I have flagged it with my colleague at the regional office. If they ever try to drag your name into this, if they ever say you were a partner or a preparer, you have proof you are not. You are clean. I made sure of it. She stood up. You are not your mother, Lila. You are not your father. You are not your sister. You are the only one in that house who ever knew how to actually build something. So go build it. She walked to the door. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, she said. Just live a beautiful life. That's the only thing they cannot stand. She left. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The IRS envelope was a brick on the wood. It wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just favoritism. It was fraud. A fraud I had been bankrolling without knowing. The last small piece of guilt in my chest, the piece that always whispered they're still your family, didn't just break. It went up in flames. It turned into ash. I felt warmer for having burned it. That night, I opened my laptop. I unblocked their email addresses for 1 minute. I typed a single message. To carl@vossmusic.com, ivosS57@gmail.com, hello@annikavoss.com. Subject, financial separation. Body. Aunt Greta came to see me. I am aware of the IRS audit. I am aware of the fraudulent deductions. I will not be involved. I will not be paying for any of it. Do not contact me. Do not put my name on any paperwork. Do not list me on any future filings. Love is not a billable hour. It is not a tax shelter. I wish you growth from a long distance. Lila. I hit send. I reblocked their emails. I blocked their phone numbers. I blocked them everywhere. The last bridge was burned. But I had not lit the fire. I was only the one walking away from the smoke. By the time the leaves started turning along the Allegheny, the world had moved on. The consequences had settled. They were not loud. They were not cinematic. They were just permanent. The world did not punish them. It simply stopped propping them up. The music shop was the first to go. I drove past Butler Street one Tuesday on the way to a vendor meeting. The Voss Music and Sound sign was gone. The window was empty. Annika's framed test pressing was no longer behind the register. There was a fresh sign in the window. Big block letters in mint green. Coming soon. True North Wellness Bar. Kombucha. CBD. Adaptogens. I learned later from Mr. Caprio at the Strip District Market that the bank had liquidated everything. The first press LPs. The vintage Fender amps. The case of harmonicas. Sold for almost nothing to estate dealers in Cleveland. It was a sad day, Lila, he said. Your dad came in to watch them carry the cabinets out. He just stood on the sidewalk. I just nodded. It was a sad day. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt a clean room where the pain used to be. The next time, I was at a UPS store downtown. It was Tuesday around 8 p.m. I was sending a hard copy of my employment verification letter to the mortgage officer. The fluorescents were too bright. The place smelled like toner and cardboard. And I saw him. I saw my father. He was wearing a brown UPS shirt. It was tight on his stomach. He was working the late counter, scanning labels. He looked a decade older than he had 4 months ago. He was not Carl Voss, indie record store man. He was a guy in his 60s working a register for hourly pay. His hands, the hands he had once pointed at me like a lecturer, were just scanning packages. He looked up. He saw me. I froze. My heart was banging. I thought, what did I expect? That he would cry? That he would say he was sorry? That he would say my name? His face went hard. The familiar shape. The familiar set of the jaw. The shame in his eyes turned into anger in less than a second. It was always anger. He looked at me. He looked at the wool coat I was wearing. He looked at the work bag on my shoulder. He looked at the clean envelope I was holding, the one with my employment letter inside, the one that proved I made more in a quarter than the music shop had ever made in a year. He knew. He didn't say anything. He turned away. He grabbed another package. He scanned it hard. He turned his back. I stood there for a beat. Then I went to a different counter. The young woman behind it was kind. I shipped my letter. I paid with my company card. I walked out into the parking lot. My hands were shaking. He had not changed. He had not learned. He was not sorry. He was angry that he had to work. He was angrier that I was the one watching him do it. The next one was my mother. A Saturday morning in June. I was in the Strip District with a coworker, getting bagels before a hike at Frick Park. The sidewalks were full of people. A man was playing the saxophone next to a hat full of dollars. And I saw her. She was sitting on a small folding camp chair, tucked into a corner near a coffee roaster. She had set up a card table with a piece of fabric over it. She was selling tiny wire-wrapped pendants, the kind with a polished pebble in the middle. $8 each. Or 3 for $20. She had a hand-lettered sign. My mother. The woman who had called my engineering work boring and soulless. The woman who had cried over a 6-year-old's hummed melody. She was selling craft pendants to tourists for cigarette money. A woman in linen pants picked one up, turned it over, set it back down, and walked away. My mother sighed without knowing she had sighed. She shifted on the camp chair like her hip hurt. She did not see me. I was across the street. I felt a small, sharp pang of pity. It went through me and out the other side. She was once Ingrid Voss, the great patron of music, the woman who could quote liner notes at brunch. Now she was a woman on a folding chair, working for change. I turned to my coworker. And if you look up there, that brick on the second floor? That used to be the apartment my grandfather rented above his shop. I kept walking. I did not look back. The last one was Annika. This was the one I dreaded most. Not because I was afraid of her. Because I was afraid of what would happen in me when I saw her. I needed a frame. I had bought a small print at the Saturday Artist Market in the Strip, a watercolor of the Smithfield Street Bridge. I was going to hang it above my new dining room table. I could have gone to any custom framer in the city. But I knew where I was going. I drove out to the strip mall on McKnight Road. I walked into the Hobby Lobby. The smell of plastic flowers, candle wax, and craft adhesive hit me. It was nauseating. I walked to the back of the store, to the framing counter. And there she was. Annika was wearing the company vest. It was a shade of red that didn't suit her. Her hair was in a low, messy bun. Her nails, once always pearl pink, were short and chipped, with dried acrylic on her thumb. She was Annika Voss, the singer-songwriter, the brand, the song. She was cutting a mat for a poster of 2 golden retriever puppies in a basket. She was clocked in. She looked up. She heard the bell. She saw me. Her face went white. Then red. Then white again. She looked like a deer caught crossing a highway. "Can I help you?" she said. It was not a question. It was a flat sentence. I read the name tag on her vest. Annika. I set my print down on the counter. A quiet little watercolor of an old steel bridge. I need a quote on a custom frame for this. My voice was calm. She had to help me. I was the customer. She was the employee. She picked up a tape measure. Her hands were trembling. 16 by 20, she muttered. She typed and stared at the screen. She would not look at me. "It'll be 160, she said. "With a basic mat and the regular glass." "That's fine. Thank you." I picked up my print. I started to turn. "Lila." I stopped. I turned back. Her eyes were wet. "Are you happy?" she whispered. "What? Are you happy?" She was shaking now. "You destroyed us. Dad is at UPS. Mom can barely walk. I'm here. Are you finally happy?" I looked at her. The girl with the Sennheiser mic. The girl with the walnut frame. The girl with the $900 coffee deal. The girl whose lifestyle had been laundered through our father's failing record shop for 6 years. I thought about my answer. "Annika," I said. My voice was very soft. Very clear. "I didn't do this." "Yes, you did," she cried. "No," I said. "This is what arithmetic looks like." She stared at me. "This is what happens when your whole life runs on someone else's account, and that account closes." I turned around. I walked out of the Hobby Lobby. I did not look back. The world had not punished them. The world had just stopped subsidizing them. My father wasn't an owner. He was an employee. My mother wasn't a patron of the arts. She was a vendor on a folding chair. My sister wasn't a brand. She was a clerk in a red vest. They weren't cursed. They weren't unlucky. They had just been living their entire adult lives on a credit line opened in my name. And I had finally, irrevocably, closed the account. 6 months after that Memorial Day, I sat in a bright office downtown and signed the last page of my mortgage. The bank manager smiled at me. "Congratulations, Ms. Voss." I took the keys. I walked into my new place. A 2-bedroom loft in a renovated mill in Lawrenceville with tall windows facing the Allegheny. I walked across the warm wood floor. I ran my hand along the exposed brick wall. I stood in the second bedroom, the one that would be my office, where my standing desk would go, and I felt my eyes get hot. I walked over to the big window. The sun was low. The river was gold. Across the water, the hills were lit in that color that only happens for about 20 minutes in the early evening. The bridges glowed. This was the view I had earned. Not Annika's hummed melody. Not my mother's wire pendants. Not the walnut frame on Butler Street. The real thing. I stood at my own window, looking at my own city, and I cried. I had not cried when I left. I had not cried when my father yelled at me. I had not cried when I saw them small and broken on the street. I cried now. They were not sad tears. They were not angry tears. They were just water. 34 years of held breath, finally exhaled. I sat on the floor with my back against the brick, and I cried until the gold went out of the river. The rebuild was quiet. But it was mine. A week later, my boss called me into her office. My real boss. Lila. She was a woman who had built her own career out of stubbornness. I respected her. The FDA submission was clean. "Your team's velocity numbers are the best in the company. Sales is closing 2 new hospital systems because of the work you shipped." "That's good news." "It's better than good." She slid a piece of paper across her desk. "You're being promoted. Effective the 1st of the month. You are now director of R&D for the entire cardiac monitoring line." She slid another paper. "And that's your new compensation package. Base, bonus, and equity refresh." I looked at the number. It was a high 6-figure total comp. It was more money in 1 year than the music shop had ever generated in 20. "You earned every dollar of it, Lila," she said. "You've been doing the job of 3 people for a long time. It's time you got paid for it." I almost laughed out loud at that. You have no idea. My new life was simple in a way I had never been allowed. I woke up on Saturday morning. I did not get on a bus. I did not unlock a metal grate. I did not unbox a shipment of LPs. I did not sit at a desk in the back of a dying record shop, doing my father's quarterly inventory tax. I made coffee. I sat by my window in a sweater. I watched the sun come up over the eastern neighborhoods and light the steel of the bridges. I went to the farmer's market. I bought peaches and bread. I hiked Frick Park. I met friends for dinner downtown. I had friends now. I had the time and the energy to be one. People who would ask, "How are you, Lila?" and actually wait for the answer. I adopted a dog. A medium mutt with one folded ear, from a rescue out in Butler. He was nervous of everything. Loud trucks. The doorbell. A shoe in the wrong place. He had come from a hard place too. I named him Maple. He slept at the foot of my bed. He didn't need anything from me but food and a soft place to be safe. I had so much of that to give now. One night I was hanging the small watercolor of the bridge. The one Annika had measured for me. I had taken it to a real custom framer in the Strip District. The frame was a thin, warm walnut. It was beautiful. I stepped back. I looked at it on the wall. My family had spent 34 years telling me to be realistic. Dreams don't pay rent, Lila. Work does. They had been wrong on a level I was only beginning to understand. My dream had been paying their rent. My talent. My focus. My circuit designing, spreadsheet balancing, problem-solving brain. They thought my dream was a hobby. They thought their dream was the real work. I looked at the walls of my loft. The walls I had paid for. I had not found peace. I had built it. Out of 70-hour weeks. Out of late-night verification reports. Out of saying no to a biscuit tin full of dreams that got stolen anyway. I had built the home they had never been. It was a home with real floors and real beams and a real view and a real dog at the foot of the bed. A home I had built with my own 2 hands. People ask me if I feel guilty. No. I feel light. I feel free. I do not hate my family. I do not really feel anything for them at all most days. They are people I used to know. I feel pity. I do not feel responsible. Because I learned the real lesson. The lesson the practical kid always learns last. Love without respect is not love. It is unpaid labor. It is a loyalty contract dressed in a holiday outfit. I did not abandon them. I just stopped financing their comfort. I stopped paying off their bad math. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep their living room warm. I did not seek revenge. I did not raise my voice. I did not write a 1,000-word public post. I just walked out the door. And I closed it softly behind me. Sometimes silence is the loudest justice in the world. If this story sounds familiar, if you know what this feels like in your own bones, drop your city and state in the comments. Because maybe you have spent years earning while someone else just enjoyed the song. And maybe, like me, you are finally ready to take the door.